Welcome to Maywood, everyone.
Can you tell us about the reports that Great Lakes will be the staging for not just the Guard, but perhaps federal agencies that might be here?
Well, great reporting on the part of our journalists. I want to be clear, we have received no calls from the White House, from the federal government, from anybody who might be in charge of some sort of troop movement. So we're glad to have read about it, but would rather have had some direct communication. They don't seem to want to communicate at all. And that's odd, because it sounds like what they're trying to do is to march right over local police. You know, we used to hear that the President of the United States supported local police. We support local police, but now it appears that he wants to ignore them altogether and just do whatever, well, he has a whim about on that day.
Governor, regional universities in Illinois, like Western Illinois University and Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, among others, they've drastically lost enrollment in the last 2 decades. One possible solution to help these schools with funding is to establish an evidence-based funding formula akin to like what the state does through like elementary and secondary education.
Yes.
What's your position on that concept for public colleges and universities in Illinois? And could something like that be a realistic solution, considering there's been less wiggle room in the last few years in the state's budget?
So let me just back up, because everybody talks about the last 2 decades and what's happened to enrollment. That's true. I was not governor over the last 2 decades. I have been governor over the last 6.5 years. And I can tell you this, we've increased funding for our state universities in the last 6.5 years. We've made sure that we have more money than ever before, and we've almost doubled the amount of scholarship money available for kids to go to college at a reasonable price, or in many cases, free. We've also stemmed the downward movement of enrollment in the state of Illinois as a result of those investments. Now, I also want to remind you, been a big demographic shift. There just are fewer people of the age to go to college, more and more. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping up our enrollment or maintaining it while other states see enrollment dropping. So we're going to do everything we can to attract more kids to college. Do I believe in evidence-based funding? 100%. I think that we ought to be doing it for our universities. We're working hard to get it done in Springfield in the legislature. It's got to be done in the right way. There's a lot of complication to it. It isn't as simple as just, well, let's do it like K-12 does it. That isn't how it works for universities. But it's certain that we need to invest in, particularly the colleges, the universities that have been left out and left behind, the ones that have been disinvested from, and those happen especially to be the ones that are in black communities. So we're going to make sure that we're investing in all of our universities. We did it even in a tight budget. We increased funding for our universities this year, and we're going to continue to do that.
Governor, does
Yes, sir.
the report about Great Lakes perhaps being the initial staging ground, does that suggest to you that it's more likely than not that the Guard is actually going to come?
You know, at this point, so much of it is rumor. Even things that we're hearing through our office, people calling who are not calling in their official capacity to let us know what's going on. We only know so much. Right now, it's hard to tell. We haven't seen troop movements yet. We also haven't seen any call-up of our National Guard, but we are on guard, hoping that that does not happen, and very importantly, trying to send a message to the White House and to the members of the Congress and the Republican Party that the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, I want to point out, the state of Illinois is 19th best among the 50 states in terms of violent crime. In other words, we're in the best half of all the states in terms of violent crime. And we've been working very hard to make that happen. And the city of Chicago isn't even in the top 25 major cities with high crime rates because we've worked to bring it down. We got more work to do. Every death is a tragedy. Every crime that's committed is a tragedy. And we need to protect our families and help the victims of violent crime. But Donald Trump has defunded the programs that would help us most to make sure that we're interrupting violence and also providing the kind of coordination between federal law enforcement and state law enforcement, the resources that are necessary for doing that. That's a real shame. And it's Donald Trump that is defunding the police. It is not the state of Illinois. It's not the city of Chicago. It's Donald Trump doing that.
Can I ask you, I don't know if you're up to speed on what happened in Minnesota today, if you had any comments about that shooting young people in a church praying when this happened?
It's awful. This is a pre-K to 8 school. I reached out to Governor Walz to let him know that we would do whatever it is that we can to help him. He should just let us know. I also, of course, expressed my condolences to him and to the families of the victims. And, of course, the victims themselves. There are people who've been wounded, as I now understand, as well as, of course, some deaths. So it's a horrible tragedy. We have too many guns out there on the streets, and we have, unfortunately, a situation where, there are kids and adults who need mental health and substance use treatment, who are often the people who ultimately they can get a hold of guns. We ought to stop that, but they can get a hold of guns and then commit these terrible crimes.
Governor, Governor, you also championed a proposal that would create the 4-year programs at community colleges. Obviously, that didn't make it through the spring legislature.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah, it didn't make it through the spring legislature.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
But if that proposal passes during veto session or
yes,
in the future,
yeah.
Could something like that undermine any gains that these regional universities are trying to make in terms of enrollment?
No, and the reason is because we're working very closely with the universities to make sure that doesn't happen. The goal here is that there are some specific areas in industry where we need more people than the universities can produce. For example, certain kinds of nursing professions. Even if you had full programs at the universities, you couldn't produce enough to fill all the positions that are available in the state of Illinois. So let's help our community colleges to produce the skilled labor that's necessary for those really good jobs, because we're not ever going to be able to produce those, even in nursing schools in the universities. That's an example, and there's so much more. Advanced manufacturing and other areas, AI and quantum, those are all things where there can be 4-year degrees that the universities don't have enough room to provide, but that our community colleges can, and can do it at a much lower cost.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah.